Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. What does a Macintosh Classic, a Dell Inspiron 530, and a 386 desktop PC have in common? You. That's right, I said you. All three of these systems have you, the viewer, the supporter of the Retro Recall, in common. I have done a video on all three of these respective computers that you see on the bench right now. There's been several comments related to each one of these systems. What I've done is kind of look over the comments and find something in particular about these systems I'm going to readdress in these videos. I thought it would be a cool series to start off. Based on comments, revisit some of the older PCs and bring them back to light to either settle some old-time debates, whether it's through the chat, save a couple of these systems by things that I may have missed, or maybe provide some additional context within each one of these systems. So you know what? We have lots to cover. Let's get right to it. And here we are with the Macintosh Classic, and a classic it is indeed. I mean, we've seen these all around, a lot of YouTube videos on these. These are really well-known systems. I'm really fortunate to have this in the collection and featured it on the Retro Recall in a video right there. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. In that video, we did an overview of this system because I didn't know if it was working. I was told it was working. I wanted to make sure it was working with everything, and I was able to get the printer going, and it worked really well. And so one of the things I encourage on the channel quite a bit is please leave a comment down below because I respond to absolutely every one of them. I love the interaction on the channel. You hear that in my outros all the time. I say that because I love the interaction. I love the ideas that we get just talking together as a community, the retro community. And so one of the things that were commented on, many things of course, was, replace the hard disk with a blue SCSI, go in and upgrade the memory because they're slightly upgradable, change the OS out to see what you can squeeze out of the OS, etc., etc., etc. And one of the comments that caught my eye, I mean, all the rest is great, and that would make it for a great restoration video or an upgrade video. But one of the things I wanted to rewind on, and that's the theme of this video today, is to replace the battery in this system. The batteries are essentially a barrel battery, similar to a Varta battery, if not Varta, which is what's in this, which ruin motherboards for so many years. They eat away at the traces, the battery acid goes on the motherboard and eats away at everything. We don't want that happening with this system. I don't know if it has or not, so what we're going to do is essentially take this apart, take a look inside, and see exactly what is going on, and see if we can remove that battery. So the first thing we're going to do is just turn it around and see the back here for a moment and see what needs to be done to take it apart. It's fairly straightforward. You need two screwdrivers. One is a T15 screwdriver. Well, they're both size T15, but different lengths. So you notice this one's just your standard size. There's two screws, one here, and they've been removed. They're just Torx screws. And then the tops, they're too far in the handle for these to reach. Fortunately, due to some hunting around yesterday, I was able to find a proper length bit, essentially to allow us to get in those tight spaces. So sure enough, we were able to go in, remove that bit remove the screw, and we're good to go. So we have that all removed now. The next thing we're going to do is flip it over on the CRT side. You want to make sure that there's something on the surface that you're working on so you don't scratch or damage the CRT. So for today, we're just going to use my solder mat, which is quite soft in what it is. And we're just going to place the CRT down on that. That way we can get a good angle on the system here. What we're going to do is take off the back. Now, this can be a little tricky if it's an older system, it hasn't been taken apart in a long time. You see this little seam that goes along here. This just pulls up and you can see it's coming off there. When you take it off, you'll be very careful. Go straight up. You don't need to do anything else. You want to go straight up for one main reason. You do not want to do any damage to the neck board here. The neck board is going to the CRT, and if you damage that, it's irreparable. So you do not want to do anything to damage that area. The other thing I'll say is working on a system like this. Now, this has not been plugged in several months. This is high voltage territory. So you want to be very careful. You're not going and touching anything to do with the anode here. You can see where it is plugged into the side of the CRT. That's where your high voltage is. You want to be absolutely sure you're not playing around in that. Now, there are ways to discharge this. This has been sitting for months and months and months, so I'm not worried about having a charge. But just to be absolutely 100% safe, I'm not going to be playing around this area anyway, because I'm going to be focusing on the motherboard, which is back here. So we're going to reorient this in a moment. But I want to be very careful is when you're working on this system, be extremely mindful of the neck board, the CRT neck board here. Because if you push this or damage this or move this, then it's possible you can break this. And if you do, you're broken the CRT. So you do not want to do anything to damage this area. And here we are with a better view of the computer. I just love these all-in-one designs. And yeah, I mean, just gonna be very careful with them, but my goodness, just really cool to look at. So we have our SCSI hard disk. I'm not exactly sure, I don't remember the stats on this system. I'll post some information here as well during editing, just because I want to show everybody what's in here. But I mean, this would make very good candidate for going and doing like a blue SCSI so that you can get away from the spinning rust, as they call it. Now, I, for one, am a huge fan of spinning rust, but when it comes to SCSI, SCSI, I do not have many of these drives. I think I have one or two, whereas the IDE drives, I have plenty, including actually a lot of SATA drives too. So that's why I am more apt to replace something like this with a blue SCSI. Not to mention it will give it a little more speed and more beneficial as well. We're going to remove the ribbon cable from the motherboard. So the motherboard is located right here. Turn this around slightly better for the angle of the camera. But the motherboard is located right here, and we have a couple of connectors that are plugged into the motherboard, which will prevent us from removing it from the chassis itself. So, I mean, Apple, if anything, other than that long Torx bit that I had to use to access it, makes it fairly simple to work on this. The first thing we're going to do is remove this SCSI cable. And I don't know if this has ever been removed. So I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth here. Fairly straightforward. There we are. And you want to be very careful. You're not damaging the cable. And you got to be, again, mindful of this neck board that's right here because, again, high voltage. It hasn't been plugged in a very long time, so I'm not too worried about that. But I still want to be absolutely careful. I'm not doing any damage to that neck board. Okay, over here we have the RAM expansion card going in here. So we have two pieces of memory that's installed, and this is just literally lifting straight up. So I'm just holding the motherboard down while I lift it straight up because there's just this interface that's here that plugs directly into a slot on the motherboard. And there we are. We have our expansion memory. So I'm not exactly sure how much memory this had. I believe it was 2 megabytes of RAM. I could be wrong. It could be 1 megabyte, but I have to double check because we have built-on memory that's already on the board, but also we have these expansion memories. I do know that these are upgradable to 3 megabytes from what I read online, but just be mindful as you're doing that to make sure you get the right memory if you're going to do that sort of upgrade. But again, something we can do in another video is an upgrade of this and of course change out the hard disk. So I'm just gonna put that aside for now. It looks like we have another ribbon cable going to the floppy drive. So I'm just gonna remove that as well. Again, that's just another ribbon cable that you see right here. I'm just gonna remove that SCSI cable because I think it's in the way there a little bit and I just wanna make sure I don't bump up anything. And the Molex, they're just out of my way. Okay, now I'm gonna go back in. Better view anyway. And there we are. So very simple, just remove those from the motherboard. Okay, now with that all removed, I haven't seen this yet. So I have no idea if this battery is leaking. I don't know. I'm just gonna cross my fingers that it's not. If it is, we'll do a little bit of cleanup and neutralize the acid. So you can see the motherboard comes right out, slides right out. There's two little guides that it sits in. Fairly straightforward, nothing fancy. It just slides right out. And there we are. We have our battery. And I don't know about you, but I am not seeing anything there that looks like it is leaking. I don't see any sort of battery acid on any of the contacts. Normally these will turn green or they'll be, I don't know, like some sort of damage around the motherboard or on the legs of these chips. You would see them turning green or bluish color and you'd want to make sure you neutralize the battery acid. But by the looks of things, it is looking pretty darn good. And not just the battery section, but looking at the overall motherboard, it is in very good condition. This is what I would expect to see, especially on systems that don't have leaky batteries. If this had leaked, there'd definitely be some trace damage, depending on when you catch it, of course. But yeah, I am extremely excited to see this in action when this computer's up and running, and even more excited that the battery is there to remove. All right, and it's fairly straightforward to remove. You just pull it out like that, and there we are. We have our battery removed, and to reinforce to everybody, you can see that there's absolutely zero leakage from this battery. It is a lithium battery, 3.5 volts, made by SAFT, I'm not familiar with them, LSL3, made in France. So, I mean, I would definitely, I'm going to replace the battery. There's modifications you can make to the motherboard to do this, but I mean, for what I do for testing and things like that, I can certainly put a new battery in for when we do the upgrade and what have you. This is one of the things that was definitely talked about quite a bit in the comments. You need to remove that battery from that board if there is one, because it will leak, it will cause damage. I have seen, I think it was Epictronics. I know Epictronics, you're subscribed, so I think you're watching this. I believe it was one of your videos as well that the chassis was all rusted as a result, or there was damage to the chassis as a result of the battery. So kudos to you for getting that all cleaned up and restoring these systems. Okay, we're going to put the motherboard back in the computer. So one of the things I'll mention is just the condition of this system is extremely remarkable. I'm looking at the capacitors in here while I'm looking around, just because I want to take a look while it's apart. And I'm not seeing anything by looking at the capacitors or the components that would warrant any sort of, worry in the motherboard. And I know one of the other things that happen when you start to have distortions on the CRT, or you start to have some issues down here, you have to look at the different boards, because I know the solder joints on some of these will actually break off or become loose, or have a little bit of spacing in them. So you want to make sure that you kind of push around and kind of detect where that would be, or inspect the boards to make sure that everything is soldered correctly. But in this particular case, we did have this already working and fired up, no problem. And our goal, again, keeping within scope, was just to remove that battery from the computer. We've successfully done that. Okay, let's get this system all put back together. Okay, and we're back, and we have the system all plugged back in all together and put together. Let's turn it on and make sure that everything still works. Oh, I see the screen. Ejecting the temporary disk. Welcome to Macintosh. And here we are loading to Mac OS. I forget what version this is. Let's go take a look. So it's version 7. So yeah, here we are. We have it working. The CRT is still looking really good. Doesn't look like there's any damage to anything. We do have the clock battery out, so naturally it's going to have some issues. We do see total memory is 2 megabytes, and one is being used by system software. So it'd be good to upgrade this to 3 megabytes for sure, and do some adjustments to this computer, as well as upgrade that the hard disk to the Blue SCSI. So, but I would say overall, this was a success. So system number 1, which is our Macintosh Classic, as per the viewer comments, we've gone in and removed and saved this computer from this evil barrel battery. Okay, let's move on to system number 2. And here we are with system number 2, the Dell Inspiron 530. And the viewer comments were really focused around the power supply, to focus on the power supply and or the coin cell battery in this computer. Because if you recall in the video posted right there, what I did was I had gone through the system and could not get this system to post. Essentially, the power supply that's in it that I did the power supply tester on showed the 5-volt rail wasn't working. So I swapped it out with a known working power supply that I've used on many systems before. It fires right up, but unfortunately, the system will not come out of reset. Now, I have done no further troubleshooting with this, but one of the comments that they made was, I did not plug in the 4-pin CPU connector on the motherboard. And I want to do that today. I want to show everybody that I did not see anything in the system to plug this into. And nor do I think there's one on the motherboard. But I have a lot of comments down below stating that, so we're going to do that today. I will happily stand corrected if we're able to get this system to post. So the second comment I received was the coin cell battery. Hey, replace that coin cell battery. That could be causing the system to stay hanging without going at a reset. And I have seen that once other before, so that was very viable. I had tried that in between editing because I wanted to see if that would make a difference, and it did not. But I'm happy to show on camera and verify that that date code on that coin cell. Okay, let's get this all kind of situated, get the system kind of turned around, and get everything set up so we can try to reproduce what was happening in that video. Okay, welcome back. We have the bench all set up with our trusty HP monitor that you see so many times on this channel. We have our Dell keyboard and mouse. How fitting, it's a Dell, but they're USB, so that's what I'm utilizing for the project. Now, this is the bad power supply, and I'm not going to take my chances twice and plug it back into the motherboard just to prove that that power supply is bad. I do have a power supply tester up there, but I showed that in that video already that this was not working. Now, the suggestion that was made when I plugged this in to say, hey, it's doing the same thing with this power supply, which I know is a working known power supply, we had the post analyzer card plugged into the PCI slot. When I had that, it could clearly show that the system was not coming out of reset. It just did not. It turned on, it held the fan high, nothing came on to post, and that was it. And so I didn't do anything else with it. So the two things that were suggested in the comments was I had not plugged in the 4-pin connector, and I argued in that chat, I do not see a 4-pin connector on this motherboard. So it's not there. It's sometimes power is carried through the ATX power supply, and that was it. And I had looked again. I opened up the case again after I had received that comment, and sure enough, I could not see one, so I left it go, moved on with another project, and that was it. I am not going to test that, but I am going to do what I had done before. I'm taking the ATX power connector, plugging it into this motherboard. So there we are. We have it plugged in. And remember, so we have the keyboard, mouse, and monitor all connected here. And now we also have the ATX power supply connected to the back of this power supply. I'm going to turn it to off. So it does have an on-off switch in the back, so we can plug in the power. So there we are. We have direct power plugged into the power bar back there. Okay, and this is where we were before. Now, this is where I would argue it stopped working. I couldn't get it going. Nothing I could do. We talked about this. And there are the 4-pin connectors on this power supply. It has multiple different types of connectors, and I said there's none. Now, before I started filming this segment, I looked inside this tower again, and sure enough, there's a 4-pin connector right in the top left part of the motherboard inside here. I don't have the lighting very good there, guys. I'm sorry. There we are. I'll just put this here for a minute. And you can see right here, there's a 4-pin connector. So I'm going to remove that 4-pin, and we're doing this together because that's the purpose of this video. And I'm just going to see what 4-pin connector is that's matching with there, just to make sure we have the right one, and we do. And we're going to take that 4-pin connector from the new power supply and plug it in. As so many people have mentioned, so many times I replied and said there wasn't one. We have the 4-pin from the new power supply connected. We have the ATX power supply connected. Let's get rid of that extra light. We don't need that right now. I'm turning on the power supply and we'll see what happens. Okay, we are getting different behavior this time. This time, it sounds like we're getting a RAM beep. The fan's still running high, but at least there's a beep now. Okay, let me grab some memory for this motherboard. I have 4 by 512 megabytes of memory installed. We used our contact cleaner to make sure that everything was good because it sat for a while. Let's flip the switch and see if we have liftoff. Okay, so it's not doing what it did before. Oh, I hit the power button in the front. It came out of oh, look, we have post. Oh, I feel like such an idiot. Oh, okay. So whoever yelled at me and told me in the comments, plug in that 4-pin, you missed it, and I argued, and they said you missed it, and I couldn't find it, it doesn't exist, and they said yes, it does. I'm sorry. I'm officially saying it on the channel. I am sorry. We have the Dell Inspiron 530 from the Were They That Bad video working on the bench. In that video, we could not get it working. It would not come out of reset. Sure enough, it showed on the post analyzer card, and you see it in front of you. We have a working computer with 2 gigabytes of memory. And let's just, while we're here, explore this computer, because again, I couldn't get it to work, and here we are, and I feel so dumb. And you know what? That happens. I'm gonna sidebar on this one. Oh my goodness. I'm telling you, I just feel so goofy. Like, thank you again for even commenting down below and pointing me in the right direction. We're loading up the info, and sure enough, the monitor is doing its thing. Okay, we have a Phoenix Award BIOS, CMOS setup utility, system info. So we have a Pentium dual CPU running at 2.2 gigahertz with 1 meg of L2 cache. We have three, it looks like 3 gigs of memory. So maybe I miscounted, I guess, in the memory. And then we have all our memory modes, DDR2 memory. So yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward. Obviously, I haven't set the clock. We did replace the battery. Well, I replaced the battery for the last video, but that would have to be changed. But yeah, it's anyway. Okay, so we don't have a hard drive installed in this computer. That's one thing that's missing from this system. Happy to restore this computer. Again, leave a comment down below. First off, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. Leave a comment down below. Let me know it was you, and say, hey, told you so. But I mean, for everybody else who had this system, if you want to see a restoration video on this and get it all up and running and get it all cleaned up and, operating system installed and all that, please leave a comment, let me know, and I'm happy to do that. So now we have system number 2, which goal was to try to get posting and see if there was ever this imaginary 4-pin connector on this motherboard, and sure enough, there was. We have a fully working system that was originally from eWaste. Let's move on to that good old 386 computer. And here we are with our beautiful 386 desktop PC. We know it's a 386 because we did a whole video on it right there. That actually is one of my, if not my top video, with over 91,000 views. So if you haven't checked that out, go please back and check it out. It's a really exciting video. And the culprit in that video was this IDE cable. And I will say, this is probably one of the most contentious things that have been mentioned in comments continually over those 91,000 views. And I forget how many comments there are on that video, but I'm telling you, there are so many comments from everybody saying, did you have the cable installed incorrectly? You can see that there's no notch on this cable, and the only indicator is the red pin 1. So in this segment with this computer, because we are rewinding and we are going back to the viewer comments, this was the number 1 comment that was made in this video. We're going to put this back on to that I/O controller, back to the back of that hard disk. I am convinced that this cable is bad, that there's a short in it somewhere. I didn't do all the troubleshooting and testing to test continuity and all that. I just assumed it was dead, and it's not worth the time. But I'm going to go ahead and take the cover off of this, get a monitor, keyboard, and mouse set up, and we're going to see if we can duplicate that same problem and finally settle in the comments that this cable is not working. Let's go. Okay, here we are with our beautiful 386 with our TIAC hard disk drive, and this was an exciting video. This is one of my favorite videos. I just love this architecture. I love the 386 build out. I love the desktop form factor and these like full height cards. Love, love, love. Now, this system really requires a full cleaning, a full disassembly, similar to the restorations you've seen. Definitely need to do that. Haven't done that yet. Will do in a future video. Okay. That's not why we're here. We're here, and I don't know if I'm stalling or not because I don't want to be proven wrong, but here's that cable, that IDE cable. Okay, this is a little better view now for everybody to kind of see what's going on. So you can see this ribbon cable is obviously the one that's been replaced. So you can see down here, we have the TIAC hard disk. And if you notice, and this system does fully function today, it's Windows 3.1 that's on this. We got it up and running together. You can see here, we have the red pin facing us plugged into the back of the hard disk. And then we also have our IO card here. I'm just going to take it out of the slot real quickly so we can see exactly how that's plugged in. Now, I was told in the comments that it is incorrectly plugged in to this card. That when I was playing around with it, when I was going through the process, that that this cable, the one that came with the system that was causing the problems, was plugged in incorrectly. You can see that pin 1, the red stripe, is pointing towards the front bracket. I line it up the exact same way. We have pin 1 on all the other cables plugged into this, the ribbon cables plugged into this IO card. But we are going to do it together. Okay, and we're all ready to power it on and show that the cable that's installed does work today. I haven't touched or modified this system since we last did that video. Hit the power. Sure enough, the system is posting absolutely no problem. Let's swap out that IDE cable with the original one. Okay, there's our brand new white one. You can see where the red stripe is towards the connector. Okay, we have that plugged in now, so you can see now it all lines up. We have the two reds pointing towards the front connectors. Okay, we have it plugged into the ISA slot. So here's the old cable going to the hard disk. We're just going to remove that. And again, remember the pin 1 was towards us. So we'll do the same thing. Okay, so we have, just to reiterate, we have the red pin facing us, which is just the same as this was. And you already saw what I did with the IO card. The red pin is facing towards the back bracket with all the ribbon cables plugged into it, including that hard disk cable. Okay, I'm going to power it on. We're going to keep a lookout for this light and see if anything posts. Here we go. Using the old cable that everybody told me was plugged in correctly. Here we go. Stop it. No way. Ah! Oh. Ah! Oh. Should I just stop making videos? Oh. I'm speechless. I'll be honest. I don't know what to say. I don't. You saw the video. I did a lot of troubleshooting in that video. I even tested that cable more than once. Unless it's a short in the cable and it's just touching again, I'm not sure. I don't know anymore. I'm definitely going to have to test that cable. Anyway, so for everybody, because there was more than one, more than 10, more than 20 comments around that cable that I defended wholeheartedly because I know what I did and I tested and made sure it was plugged into that IO card correctly, including the back of the hard disk. I replaced it with this and it fired up immediately. I even went so far as to take this cable off, plug that one back in, and it would not work. I'm telling you what I did. It did not work, and for whatever reason, it's working now. It doesn't seem to be doing anything here. I'm going to turn it off again. I want to see it fire back up. I'm going to move the cable around, you know, fidgety, old cables, you know how they are. They don't work half the time, right? Oh, jeez. Okay, here we go. I moved the cable all around. Power back up. This is the old one still in there. No red light. And post. I'm throwing the towel, everybody. This is crazy. Okay, now that you've seen me completely break down on this one, I'm going to go to our outro. And here we are at the end of the video, and I'm telling you, I am I can't. All right, let's go through this. So, what do we have in common? What do these three systems have in common? Well, first off, they all work. Jeez. All right, let's look at system number one. Remember, I was asked in the comments as our rewind back to these systems that we had to remove that battery to prevent any leakage, and if it was leaking, to neutralize the battery acid. And fortunately, it was not leaking, thank goodness. So we were able to get that out in time and prove that the Mac still fires up no problem. And some added bonus, we were able to inspect a little bit of the capacitors and make sure we're good to go. So I think in a future upgrade video, that'll be really cool on this Mac. Actually, I enjoyed using this, and I think it'd be really cool to continue to explore it. Number two, our Dell Inspiron 530, everybody. Power supply, 4-pin connector got me again. I am so embarrassed at that. So thank you to everybody who commented down below. I think there was 1 or 2 viewers that had about that 4-pin for sure, and one who actually continued to message me about it and say, did you do that yet? And I went back and forth with them a little bit. So thank you so much. We have a fully working Dell Inspiron 530 that needs some good TLC. Let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see this system turn into in terms of you want to see a restoration video on it, what type of operating system do you want to see on this, etc. So let me know in the comments. But yeah, we have this up and running, and all it was that 4-pin connector. So rewinding back to this computer, we were able to get up and running. This. Oh, I don't think I'm ever going to let this down on this channel if I continue in the videos. I'm sure I'm going to hear about it in the comments in this one. That IDE cable. I mean, this is the one I had replaced it with. We have the original back in here. The one that everybody told me, anybody who commented, anybody who noticed it, it was reversed. No matter what I said to everybody, they were like, no, it's reversed. You got to test the cable, their experience. Now, I've had many a broken IDE cable in my ears, specifically the desktop IBMs that you slide the case on. I always found that it damaged the cables. So it wasn't out of the realm of possibility for that to be bad on this computer. Not to mention during editing, during the filming, I edited it out in the final video. I did take that cable and specifically make sure it was connected correctly. So without doing additional testing, I can't 100% confirm if there is a potential short in that cable. I am going to do that. I am going to do a continuity test to make sure everything's good. But again, yeah, I just, I tried that so many times before I ended up doing the final edit. And here we are rewinding because I wanted to prove a point and say, no matter what I did, it was going to not work. And it fired up first shot. And it was, the old IDE cable was perfectly fine by looks of things. And we probably is. I mean, I jolted it around there and I reseated the card and it didn't seem to make a difference. So yeah. So to everybody who's still a subscriber, who still watches my videos, thank you to absolutely everybody who comments on these videos. You guys are the reason this continues. You're able to keep me going, and the comments actually inspired me to go back and do one of, a video like this. And so if you like this type of video, not only give it a thumbs up, but also let me know down in the comments. I keep on saying that, but let me know if you like this type of video. I will continue to go through the comments on the other videos and do another similar video where we revisit older systems that we've done in other videos and make sure that we address some of these outstanding comments that are made on these videos. Thank you for your support. Without you, this would not be possible. If you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It makes a world difference, helps the channel grow. Hit the notification button, change it to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know. Is there anything else you'd like to see on this system particularly, or is there anything that you may have missed or I may have missed? Would you want to see a restoration video on the Mac Classic? Let me know. I will certainly take that all into consideration for future content. always making new content. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.